technology, furniture and bedding specialists.
Go!
Missing this?
When that didn't materialise, I think both Paulie and myself probably looked at each other and kind of thought, what next?
Then get this, the all-new OTB Sports app. Off the Ball, Ireland's premier sports channel, now has a new home, featuring the biggest names in Irish and world sports. Podcasts, interviews, news, commentary, analysis, plus almost 20 years of sporting archives. All free and ready when you are, at home or on the go. The new OTB Sports app. Download it now from the App Store and Google Play.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Duff and Heskey.
You're welcome back now. As we mentioned in the news round, Tony Dunne has passed away at the age of 78. Republic of Ireland international, enjoyed huge success at Manchester United, 1968 European Cup winning team. He was on the FA Cup winning team of 63. He won 2 league titles as well. And across his 13 years at United, he made 535 appearances, which has him very comfortably in the top 10 of appearances for United. To tell us more about one of Ireland's great players, we have John Giles with us. John, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure, Joe.
Very sad news, Tony Dunne's passing, and you picked him out recently as Manchester United's best left-back, Ireland's best left-back as well, and there's plenty of competition in both those categories. So yeah. We're talking about a serious operator here.
Oh, very, very much so. I think Tony was the best left-back in what was then the First Division for about 10 years, Joe. And like most fullbacks in a very, very successful team, Joe, they don't get much publicity. And obviously, Tony played for the Republic of Ireland, and he wouldn't get as much publicity as he would have had playing for England, for example. So he was under the radar a little bit, but well spoken of among his fellow players, and very, very valuable member to Manchester United.
When you were at Stella Maris, you came up against him.
I did. We played under 15. I was playing with Stella Maris. He was playing with St. Finbarrs, who used to play up, I think it was in Drimna, Joe, behind the old Star Cinema. Actually, it was a very, very good pitch. They had a very, very good team. And I think we just pipped them for the league. We had a very good team at Stella Maris. They had Eric Barber. If people remember Eric Barber playing for them. Oh, he used to score about 100 goals a year. Eric, terrific player. I think he's the late Eric now. I think he passed away, Joe, but he was a terrific player. And they were a terrific team. But funny enough, in that team, Joe, looking back on it with Tony, he wasn't outstanding at that stage, Joe. And he wasn't in consideration, say, for the schoolboy international team. And I think then they left them block to go to Shelbourne. And he came on in leaps and bounds, playing for Shelbourne in the League of Ireland. And that's when Manchester United bought him. I went there in 1956, and Tony came a few years after that. I haven't played very few games for Shelbourne, and immediately was an outstanding player.
And he was 5'6". Was it by dint of his size? Maybe he wasn't rated as highly initially. I was small. I wasn't a fullback, but playing for Stella Maris, and Tony was. But Tony was a fullback, so that might have gone against him, Joe. You know, but he proved to be very good in the air, exceptionally quick, and playing the players he had. He wasn't a great kicker of the ball, Tony. Great passer of the ball, but when he was playing with like Georgie Best and Bobby Charlton, he could just, when he'd win it, he'd give it to them, and then off you go then. So he wasn't an outstanding schoolboy, but when he went to Shelbourne, and then I think it was about 3 years later, he became an outstanding player. Because there was a quote from Bobby Charlton where he said he was quite possibly the quickest defender he had ever seen.
Well, he was thereabouts, Joe. Tony came at a time when there was a big change in football, where like before my time or just before my time, fullbacks were big, strong fellas, didn't attack very much, got stuck into the wingers, and were very, very physical. But what they weren't so good at was when the wingers, the great wingers of the day, like Tom Finney and Matthews and that, they could beat them relatively easily. And then there was a change in the game in my time where the fullbacks got smaller and smaller, but quicker and quicker.
So the wingers couldn't give them a chase, and actually in the long run that's where they got rid of the wingers. They became the wingless wonders with Alf Ramsey. So Tony epitomised that particular player at that particular time, Joe. I think if he'd gone to England, say 4 or 5 years beforehand, he would have been considered too small because they were looking for big fellas. But they were looking for fellas of Tony's build and speed at that time. See, there was no wingers could outdo them for speed at that particular time. You had Ray Wilson, George Cohen, who were the two fullbacks for England at that particular time. Paul Reaney, say, playing for Leeds United. The wingers, the fullbacks were getting quicker and quicker, and there was nobody quicker than Tony.
Right.
But he could use the ball well when he got it, Joe. You know, he didn't give the ball away. He wasn't a great kicker of the ball, but he could. And luckily enough, he had Bobby Charlton playing the same team, Georgie Best. So as soon as he won it, he could give it to them and let them get on with it. But he could still come on the overlap and do a bit of damage.
That's all very interesting. I didn't realise the change to the smaller and more mobile full-back had happened around then. So in effect, before that, was it effectively 4 big lumps with, you know, not a low centre of gravity, and so Stanley Matthews it'd have a field day against them? That was the way it had been. Yeah,
that's the way it was, though. The big fullbacks were expected to, say, they used to call it diving in. Not all of them did, but a lot of them did. They were expected to dive in, get the tackle in, win the tackle. And of course, the fellas with the skill like Matthews and Finney and these great players just skip past them and do them in. So obviously the coaches and the managers copped on, this is not the way to do it. We'll get smaller guys, quicker guys, and don't have them diving in and push the winger up the wing and match them for pace, Joe.
Right.
And that's what happened. Actually, that's what happened in 1966. England up to then had played with plenty of wingers. You know, John Connell, Phil Thompson, these terrific wingers, but they weren't doing the business. So Alf Ramsey, during the World Cup, Alan Ball didn't start the World Cup for England, and I think Martin Peters, he brought those two on instead of, I think it was Terry Payne or Peter. Anyway, the regular wingers, and that changed the whole game, and everything went to 4-3-3 and 3 midfield players in that, Joe, at that particular time. So Tony was right at the right time for coming into the game for Manchester United.
Right.
And as I say, I think he became the best left back for at least 10 years at that particular time.
Yeah, so we're talking about here really one of Ireland's great players, and you played together in the 1963 FA Cup final, that win. I think there were 3 Irish players, yourself and Tony included, on that team. What kind of character?
Noel Cantwell, there was 3 Irish,
that's right,
3 Irish lads, yeah.
So your memory of Tony as a person and as a player and a member of the squad, what kind of fellow was he?
Tony was a very quiet lad, Joe. Like, he kept to himself a lot. Later on, I think he ran a golf
driving range,
thing. Yeah, he became a very good golfer.
Yeah, I think he got down to 1 or 2 as a handicap.
He's very good, but he was a bit of a loner, Tony, in relation to the other. He mixed okay. Like when we were abroad and that, he'd mix okay, Joe. But mostly he would keep to himself a lot, Joe. Very quiet lad, good pro, family man. Got on with the game. No messing about with him at all. So he, like, from Matt Busby's point of view, any manager's point of view, he'd be the ideal pro for you.
Yeah, that's a dream
player,
stuff, really. No
trouble.
Yeah.
Just got on with it.
Yeah. And for Ireland, did you play together much for Ireland?
Yeah, a fair bit. Yeah. Actually, when I was player manager, I brought him back into the team, Joe. For some reason or other, he'd been left out of the team for a while, and we were on a tour of South America, playing Brazil and that, and I brought him back into the team. I couldn't understand. Maybe he might have told the managers before me that he had difficulty getting away. You weren't automatic releases in those days, and for a time we were a very Mickey Mouse outfit as well. Joe, so I didn't encourage you to kill yourself to go away with the Irish team. And even now for a few years, I think when I still thought he was still our best left back, Joe. And I brought him back into the team again.
Right, because I know when he left United, and he said as much himself, he didn't feel Matt Busby gave him enough support around his testimonial, and things ended on a sour note there. But he went to Bolton. He went to Bolton and made another 200 appearances for them. Yeah,
he's a very fit lad. I played against him at Bolton as well when I went to West Brom. We were in the second division, and again he was outstanding for there. I think he did leave on bad terms over his testimonial, Joe. I don't know exactly what it was. I think it was something to do with Dennis Law was giving the testimonial before him, and he was at Manchester United before Dennis Law was. It was something like that anyway, but he didn't leave on good terms. But he was a very, very good, terrific player for Bolton.
Yeah.
I think he got promotion with them at one stage.
Yeah, well, our condolences to all the family, and it's worth marking the passing of a brilliant Irish player. This must be, well, I mean, don't want to overstate things either, but a strange period in your life. I don't just mean in the midst of the pandemic, but even just you get to that point in life where the phone must ring far too often now with news of another former player or former teammate who's passed on. Strange thing, I would think, when you get to that stage of life, John, where you're getting those phone calls. I mean, difficult at any time of life, but you're getting them a lot, I would think.
Well, too many, Joe. I'm keeping my fingers crossed all the time. Eddie Gray is my contact at Leeds,
right? And
Eddie's a terrific lad, but I hate hearing from him.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do.
He rang last week. Well, he rang me about Paul Maley at the time, and then Terry Cooper. He didn't ring me about this when I found this out myself from the family this morning. But it's fingers crossed all the time, Joe.
Yeah,
all the time. You know, because lads of my generation, I mean, I keep my fingers crossed for myself as well, Joe. But you know, most of the lads I played with are a similar age to myself, so they're in the danger age. So it's fingers crossed all the time.
Do you talk to many of your former teammates aside from Eddie at this stage, John?
Now and again. Mick Martin rang me this morning. It wasn't the Leeds way, but you know, Mick was an Irish, terrific lad. He rings me fairly regularly. Eddie keeps me in touch of things at Leeds. So now and again, I spoke to Terry Conroy a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. So now and again, Joe, but it wouldn't be on too regular a basis, you know.
I guess whenever you guys do meet up, it's like, you know, years go by, but you pick it up straight away. That tends to be the way with teammates.
Oh yeah. Well, I was at Leeds for 12 years. And most of the lads that were there, some lads were there before me. Norman, for example, was there before me. Paul Reaney, Paul Madeley, and there is a bond there, Joe. Because when you're playing, it's like being in the army together. Because you're playing in matches, you're depending on each other. Particularly in those days when we went away to play behind the Iron Curtain, and they would get people, you know, teams oppositions getting stuck into us, and the referee not having it. You had to stick together, Joe. So when you meet up over that period of time with the lads, it's as if you've never been away. You know, I went up. The Lord Mayor was given the team from certain periods, 70. I think it was 64 to 74. Freedom of the city. I might have told you about that before, Joe. And nearly all the lads were there that night. So it was just as if we'd never been away from each other.
Yeah. The same old stupid jokes come out quickly enough, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, people, funny enough, people think when you get together you're talking about the football, you know, like when I did this and I do that. Yeah. It's never like that, Joe. Never. Nobody ever talks about themselves or what they did. They wouldn't be allowed to. It's just a bit of fun and old-fashioned fun of lads getting together and having a laugh with each other.
Yeah, and probably how's the family and how's life and how you doing and that kind of stuff.
Aye, well, we get that, yeah. We do that anyway. I think we're always in touch somehow or other. You know, like I wouldn't be in touch now with Mick Jones very much, but I know through Eddie how he was. And obviously when you meet him at the dues, Joe, you know, you find out. But if anything goes wrong, we find out fairly quickly, you know, who it is. And as I say, Eddie is my man. Yeah. At Leeds. He gets to know all the news first.
Okay, so in the nicest possible way, you don't like when his name pops up on the mobile?
No. He knows that. I have a bit of a dark joke with him about it. I'd say, Eddie, I love you, but I hate seeing your name coming up on my phone.
I'm sure.
But he knows that. He knows that himself.
I'm sure. One thing is slightly connected with that 1968 team, but I asked you about this on the phone the other week when we were talking because I was filling in for Nathan, but I said I would do it with the listeners as well because they're showing a lot of the old games on TV at the moment, and they showed the 1968 final the other day, and I couldn't believe, and I hadn't really heard much of him before because with, you know, 68 team, it's Best and it's Law and it's Charlton and these kind of players, and Johnny Aston on the left wing, who was 20 years of age, that night at Wembley, genuinely was, I don't know if you've seen the full game or we at it, was just fantastic. Even the Benfica boss, Otto Gloria, said afterwards, I laid plans for coping with Best and Charlton and the other stars. Nobody told me to worry about the boy Aston. Genuinely, he was brilliant, John. And I was thinking, how haven't I heard of Johnny Aston? Like, did he just have the night of his life, or was he always a very, very good player?
Well, he was a good player, but I think he did have the night of his life as far as football goes. I didn't know him at all, but funny enough, his father was a terrific player. His father played in the 48 Cup final as a left back, and he was Johnny Aston. This lad was called Johnny Aston Jr.
Right.
And he played for a couple. He played quite a few matches for Manchester United. But as a left winger, he was a bit hit and miss, Joe.
Right.
You know, he could have. But I never seen him playing as well as he did that night. Funny enough, and what a time to do it.
Well, yeah, it's not a bad one.
If you're going to pick a time to do it, that's the time to do it. But he was always a lad. I think he was down at the club as a young pro just before I left, and I knew his attitude was terrific.
Okay.
Week in and week out. Anytime I saw him play. And I believe he was the same in training. He really wanted to do it. Very humble lad, very, very nice lad. But like they used to say that about wingers, Joe, in the old days. You know, they were supposed to be all a bit mad, you know, bit wild, have their day, and that. And he was a bit in that way. He always had a go. He wasn't always brilliant, but that was the best I ever saw him play.
Right.
At that particular time, when he was beating players, going down the wing, getting in crosses. He was absolutely brilliant.
He was,
but it wouldn't have been a typical performance from him.
Right, okay, that's very interesting. Wow, geez, as you said, he picked his moment. I've left this too late now. The clock's against me. I only have about a minute. But I mentioned to you before we came on air tonight. Later on, we're going to be chatting a bit about captaincy. Wayne Rooney did a big article at the weekend about captaincy. Kenny Cunningham's going to come on and talk about his experiences of it. Did you put much stock in a captain? Was it vitally important to a team? Did it make any great difference?
No, I thought a captain, Joe, the main thing for a captain was to play well himself. Show by example. I always thought it was overrated. I still think it's overrated because usually the best players get out and do their stuff, and then they can urge people on and keep going and be the right character themselves. They can be vocal on the pitch. But I was lucky enough. I played in a great team, particularly Leeds United, where Billy Bremner was the captain. And I used to read a lot in the paper that Billy inspired us and that. But I never felt that. And I'm not meaning anything. Billy was a great player, but Norman Hunter didn't need to be inspired. Eddie Gray didn't need to be. Peter Lorimer. You get out and do your stuff. Yeah. So the main thing I find for a captain is the captain himself to do his stuff, Joe. Do it by example, not by shouting out. I've seen lots of captains swinging their arms around and doing this and doing that and that. That's all affectation. I don't believe in that at all. How you get the respect of your fellow pros is to do the stuff yourself, play for the team, play as well as you can, give as much as you can, and then you can get on to other people. If you're not doing that yourself, the players about you would resent you because you're only playing to the public.
Yes, they'd see through it.
Yeah.
Okay, short and sweet. That sums it up perfectly. Listen, thanks so much for that, John. Appreciate it.
Okay, Joe.
Cheers.
Speak
John
to you
Giles
again.
there.
Yeah.
He'll be back on Thursday with Nathan picking another best of 11. Back in a sec.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Shearer and Owen. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
This week on the Home Show podcast. The construction sector is back, but how are COVID safety measures going on building sites? And could it affect building costs for your home? The CIF's Dermot Carey joins me to discuss all of that. Staging your home is more important than ever, especially in the era of virtual viewings. Well, interior design